Welcome back, everyone. We're glad to have you here with us. For decades, one pattern has emerged from the shadows of classified military files. UFOs don't just appear randomly. They're drawn to our most sensitive installations, our nuclear weapons facilities, our missile silos buried deep in the American heartland. Why? What do these mysterious craft want with humanity's most destructive technology? Tonight, we dive into declassified reports that finally reveal the connection, documents that paint a picture not of random encounters, but of deliberate surveillance, of unknown intelligences watching, studying, and sometimes interfering with our nuclear capabilities. So, settle in as we explore the secret files that suggest UFOs aren't just visiting Earth, they're monitoring our weapons. Share your thoughts in the comments. What do you believe draws them to our nuclear sites? Now, let's step inside the classified world where UFOs and nuclear weapons collide. Chapter 1. The nuclear pattern emerges. In the silent, labyrinthine corridors of the Pentagon, hidden away inside metal filing cabinets stamped top secret, sat a collection of reports that told a story few dared to confront. The documents spoke of strange lights flaring over missile silos, unidentified craft drifting like silent sentinels above nuclear storage facilities, radar screens blinking with signatures that made no sense, appearing and reappearing with uncanny consistency at some of humanity's most sensitive and heavily guarded military installations. For decades, these reports remained buried. Only in the early 2000s, when persistent researchers began filing Freedom of Information Act requests, did the true scope of the mystery start to emerge. The pattern they uncovered was too coherent to dismiss. These were not scattered, random events. The phenomenon appeared deliberate, purposeful, and overwhelmingly focused on one specific type of target: nuclear weapons. Statistical analysis revealed a striking anomaly. While sightings of unidentified flying objects occurred all over the planet, over rural farmland, sprawling deserts, and crowded cities, the number of incidents near nuclear sites formed a concentrated cluster. Military bases housing nuclear weapons reported unidentified aerial encounters at rates 20 to 30 times higher than non-nuclear installations. By the time the 1970s arrived, a handful of military analysts had begun privately treating UFO surveillance of nuclear sites not as a speculative possibility, but as an established operational fact. One of the most determined investigators of this pattern, Dr. Robert Hastings, spent decades collecting and comparing the reports. His research revealed that virtually every major nuclear weapons facility in the United States had documented unexplained aerial encounters. Malmstrom Air Force Base in Montana, FE. Warren Air Force Base in Wyoming. Minot Air Force Base in North Dakota. Nuclear storage depots, missile launch silos, and weapons assembly plants each displayed the same unnerving footprint of repeated visitation. The declassified documents made it clear that these incidents were not fleeting or ambiguous. Many encounters lasted hours, involved multiple trained witnesses, produced corroborating radar returns, and generated formal military investigations. Security officers described craft that moved with impossible precision, hovering silently over missile fields, then accelerating at breathtaking speeds beyond the capability of any known aircraft. In some cases, the objects appeared to be methodically scanning or surveying the facilities below, as though cataloguing the details of America's nuclear arsenal. What made the reports especially compelling was their source. These accounts did not come from civilian UFO enthusiasts or anonymous tipsters. They came from missile launch officers, nuclear security specialists, radar operators, and base commanders. These were individuals with top-secret clearances, trained to identify threats and evaluate aircraft with precision. Their careers depended on accuracy, composure, and discretion, qualities far removed from sensationalism. The military's public response to this pattern was, however, carefully managed. Official statements dismissed UFO sightings as misidentified aircraft, atmospheric phenomena, or simple human error, but internal correspondence painted a different picture. Memos revealed genuine concern over unknown craft surveilling nuclear weapons. Security protocols were updated quietly. New detection systems were installed with little fanfare. Although the Pentagon denied any extraordinary activity, its actions betrayed a far deeper level of apprehension. Perhaps most revealing was the global scope of the phenomenon. In the 1990s, declassified Soviet records showed that Russian nuclear installations had experienced eerily similar encounters. British documents revealed unexplained activity at nuclear bases in England. French military files noted mysterious aerial surveillance over their own nuclear facilities. Whatever intelligence piloted these craft, it appeared to take an equal interest in every nation's nuclear capability, not merely America's. The timing of these events also seemed too precise to dismiss as coincidence. UFO activity spiked during moments of heightened nuclear significance. Weapons testing, alerts during Cold War tensions, or major technological advancements. When the United States carried out atmospheric nuclear tests in Nevada during the 1950s and 1960s, unidentified craft appeared with remarkable regularity, sometimes maintaining a cautious but persistent distance from the detonations. The same pattern emerged near Soviet test sites, British nuclear deployments, and French facilities in the Pacific. Speculation over why these craft were drawn to nuclear sites produced several theories. Some analysts proposed that nuclear energy produced detectable signatures, radiation, electromagnetic disturbances, or heat patterns that could be monitored from great distances, making such locations natural targets for reconnaissance. Others argued the craft might be studying human nuclear technology to compare it with their own power or propulsion systems. A darker hypothesis arose from the disturbing number of interference reports. At several nuclear facilities, UFO encounters coincided with sudden malfunctions of missile systems, communications networks, or security devices. These were not random glitches. They appeared deliberate, as though the craft were testing or probing human defenses, learning the limits of our most secure systems. Yet for all their intrusions, the unidentified craft rarely displayed overt aggression. They observed, they scanned, they occasionally interfered, but they did not destroy. Some theorists took this as evidence of a kind of cosmic peacekeeping, speculating that an advanced civilization might be monitoring humanity's nuclear development to prevent global catastrophe. Others suggested a psychological motive. By demonstrating their ability to penetrate the most secure facilities on Earth, these unknown intelligences could be subtly reshaping the mindset of the very people entrusted with our most destructive weapons. The documents also revealed the strain these incidents placed on commanders and personnel. Standard protocol required immediate reporting of unauthorized aircraft in restricted airspace. But how do you file a report on an object that accelerates from 0 to several thousand miles per hour in seconds, or that seems to defy gravity entirely. Faced with this dilemma, many base commanders chose vague wording, equipment malfunction, or atmospheric anomaly, rather than risk their credibility with a direct UFO report. As a result, the true number of encounters was almost certainly higher than the official record suggested. By the time the 1980s arrived, the pattern had grown too pronounced to ignore. Quietly, without public acknowledgement, the military established special investigation units under a series of code names. These teams gathered data, conducted interviews, and studied the incidents under heavy classification. Though much of their work remains secret to this day, what has emerged suggests that senior officials became convinced the UFO nuclear connection was both real and worthy of serious investigation. The emergence of this pattern marked a turning point. No longer could unidentified aerial phenomena near nuclear weapons be dismissed as random mistakes. The concentration of incidents around nuclear facilities suggested deliberate, organized surveillance by an intelligence that not only understood the significance of nuclear technology, but seemed determined to monitor it closely. Whether that intelligence originated from a foreign adversary, a clandestine domestic program, or something entirely beyond human understanding remains an open question. As one moves deeper into these declassified files, a single conclusion becomes unavoidable. The link between unidentified flying objects and nuclear weapons is not a myth or a fringe theory. It is a documented phenomenon spanning decades, continents, and governments, and at its heart lies a mystery that challenges our assumptions about who or what might be watching humanity's deadliest creations. Chapter 2: Malmstrom Air Force Base, the Shutdown Incident. The morning of March 24th, 1967 began like any other at Malmstrom Air Force Base in Montana. Beneath the rolling prairie, deep underground, 10 Minuteman nuclear missiles sat in their fortified silos, each one engineered to deliver catastrophic power to targets thousands of miles away. Above ground, security teams patrolled the perimeter while radar operators scanned the vast northern airspace surrounding one of America's most sensitive and heavily guarded military installations. But by dawn, the calm routine had shattered. All 10 nuclear missiles had mysteriously gone offline. Security alarms triggered across multiple launch facilities. And according to several witnesses, strange unidentified flying objects had been observed hovering directly above the missile silos in the dark hours before sunrise. The incident began in the early morning when Captain Robert Salas, a missile launch officer stationed at Oscar Flight, received an urgent call from his security team leader. The man's voice was strained and on the edge of panic. He reported strange lights in the sky, bright, pulsing objects moving with impossible precision and silently hovering over the underground missile silos. Initially, Salas dismissed the report, assuming his team had spotted conventional aircraft, helicopters, or perhaps unusual atmospheric phenomena. But only minutes later, the phone rang again, and this time the fear in the security leader's voice was unmistakable. The objects were still there, hovering above the facility, and now something was happening to the missiles themselves. One by one, the nuclear weapons were going offline. Inside the underground launch control facility, warning lights began to flash across Salas's control panel. Status indicators showed the missiles switching from combat-ready condition to a no-go state. Not just one or two, but all 10 Minuteman missiles were systematically shutting down. In the world of nuclear deterrence, this was not a mere technical glitch. It was a catastrophic failure of America's strategic defense posture. Salas immediately contacted his commander and reported the escalating situation. Protocol dictated an immediate investigation of any nuclear weapons system failure, but this case was entirely without precedent. The missiles were not destroyed, nor did they show signs of physical tampering. They had simply been rendered inoperable by some unknown mechanism. Even more unsettling, the security teams above continued to report strange objects hovering over the launch facilities. This was not an isolated occurrence. Only 8 days earlier, on March 16th, the so-called Echo flight incident had taken place. Multiple witnesses had reported similar lights over missile silos, followed by a complete shutdown of nuclear weapons systems. Security personnel described disc-shaped objects glowing with an eerie blue-white light, projecting beams that seemed to scan the underground installations. Colonel Charles Holt, later known for his involvement in the Rendlesham Forest incident in England, was stationed at Malmstrom during this time and later provided corroborating testimony about these events. According to Holt and several other officers, the objects displayed flight characteristics defying conventional explanation. They moved without sound, accelerated instantly from stationary positions, and seemed to respond to human activity below as though they were aware of being observed. The official investigation that followed was both swift and deeply classified. Technical teams meticulously examined every component of the disabled missile systems, searching for mechanical faults, electronic malfunctions, or evidence of sabotage. What they discovered was troubling. The missiles showed no sign of physical damage or internal failure. They had simply been switched off by some external force. Military engineers were baffled. How could 10 separate nuclear weapons, each located miles apart and protected by multiple layers of redundant security systems, be disabled simultaneously? The missile's guidance systems, launch mechanisms, and communication networks had all been affected, suggesting interference at a fundamental electronic level. Yet no known technology could achieve such an effect from the air without leaving detectable traces. Witness testimony painted a consistent and disturbing picture. Security guards described the craft as if they were conducting systematic surveys of the missile facilities. One object would hover over a silo for several minutes, apparently scanning or studying the installation, before moving methodically to the next. This behavior suggested intelligence and purpose, rather than random aerial phenomena. The psychological impact on the base personnel was profound. For decades, missile crews had operated under the assumption that their weapons represented the ultimate deterrent, safeguarded by the most advanced security measures on Earth. The notion that unknown craft could penetrate this security and disable America's nuclear arsenal at will challenged the very foundation of national defense. Publicly, however, the official response was carefully managed. Statements described the missile failures as routine technical malfunctions, nothing more than part of the normal maintenance cycle for complex weapon systems. Any references to unidentified aerial phenomena were scrubbed from official reports. Personnel involved were briefed on the classified nature of nuclear operations and firmly reminded of their obligations to secrecy. Captain Salas, however, could not let the matter rest. Years later, after leaving the military, he began to speak publicly about his experiences at Malmstrom. His testimony provided detailed first-hand accounts of the missile shutdowns and the strange objects that preceded them. Salas insisted the incidents represented deliberate interference by unknown intelligences, not mere technical failures or misidentified aircraft. The efforts to suppress the truth extended beyond simple classification. Some witnesses reported being transferred to new assignments shortly after the incidents. Others described pressure from superior officers to alter their accounts or avoid discussing what they had seen. The military's existing program for handling UFO reports, Project Blue Book, seemed utterly inadequate when dealing with events involving nuclear weapons. Declassified documents from the period reveal the military's internal struggle with these events. Memoranda between base commanders and Pentagon officials showed genuine concern about the security implications of the missile shutdowns. If unknown craft could disable America's nuclear deterrent, the traditional concepts of military superiority and strategic balance became meaningless. Technical analyses offered few answers. Engineers found that the weapon's electronic systems had been somehow reset or overridden, yet the mechanism remained a mystery. No electromagnetic pulse signatures were detected. No physical evidence of interference was found. The missiles had simply stopped working at the exact moment the strange objects appeared overhead. Teams quietly interviewed dozens of personnel who had witnessed the incidents. Their testimonies were remarkably consistent. Disc-shaped or oval objects glowing with unusual light had hovered above the missile silos for extended periods. The craft moved silently, displaying flight characteristics unlike any known aircraft. Most disturbing, the objects appeared to know precisely where the nuclear weapons were located. Similar incidents occurred at other nuclear facilities during the same era, suggesting a coordinated surveillance operation rather than isolated events. The pattern was unmistakable. Unknown craft were systematically visiting America's nuclear weapons installations, apparently studying or testing the defensive capabilities of the world's most destructive arsenal. For those stationed at Malmstrom, the March 24th incident marked a turning point in their understanding of national security. The most powerful weapons ever devised had been rendered harmless by technology they could neither comprehend nor counter. Whatever intelligence controlled those craft possessed capabilities that made conventional military power seem almost primitive. The official silence surrounding these events only deepened the mystery. If the incidents were truly technical malfunctions, why the extreme secrecy? If they involved foreign surveillance, why was there no public outcry, no diplomatic protest, and no visible military response? The answer, according to those who were there, was simple. The military had encountered something beyond its ability to explain or control. As we move deeper into the documented history of unidentified aerial phenomena at nuclear facilities, the Malmstrom incidents stand as perhaps the most significant. Not only did they demonstrate unknown intelligence's interest in humanity's deadliest weapons, but they also revealed those intelligence's ability to neutralize our most powerful defensive systems with apparent ease. Chapter 3: Warren Air Force Base, Lights Over the Silos. Deep in the Wyoming prairie, where endless grassland meets an impossibly wide sky, sits F.E. Warren Air Force Base, home to one of America's largest concentrations of nuclear missiles. The Minuteman intercontinental ballistic missiles buried beneath this landscape represent a cornerstone of the nation's nuclear deterrent, their concrete silos scattered across thousands of square miles of remote countryside. But for the men and women tasked with guarding these weapons, the isolation that provides security also creates the perfect setting for encounters that challenge everything they thought they knew about the skies above. Throughout the 1970s and 1980s, Warren Air Force Base became the site of repeated UFO encounters that followed a disturbing pattern. strange lights would appear over the missile fields, hovering directly above underground silos with a precision that suggested intimate knowledge of their locations. Unlike random aircraft or atmospheric phenomena, these objects seemed drawn specifically to the nuclear installations, conducting what appeared to be systematic surveillance of America's most sensitive military assets. Security Team Alpha 7 was conducting a routine patrol on a clear October night in 1975 when Sergeant James Morrison first spotted the lights. Initially appearing as a single bright point on the horizon, the object grew larger as it approached, revealing itself to be a disc-shaped craft approximately 30 feet in diameter. What struck Morrison most was the complete silence of its movement. No engine noise, no rotor wash, no sonic disturbance of any kind, as it glided effortlessly across the prairie landscape. The object came to rest directly above Launch Facility Delta 9, one of Warren's active missile silos. From his position roughly 2 miles away, Morrison watched through binoculars as the craft maintained a stationary hover approximately 100 feet above the underground installation. Bright beams of light emanated from the object's underside, apparently scanning the silo and its surrounding security systems. The entire encounter lasted nearly 40 minutes before the craft accelerated silently into the darkness. Morrison's report triggered an immediate security alert. Within minutes, additional security teams were dispatched to investigate possible intrusion at Delta 9. What they found was unsettling. The silo's external sensors had malfunctioned during the time period of Morrison's sighting. Security cameras had gone offline. Even the underground communication systems linking the silo to the main base had experienced temporary failures. Yet there was no evidence of physical tampering or conventional sabotage. Base radar operators confirmed Morrison's account. Master Sergeant Linda Chen, monitoring air traffic from Warren's control tower, had tracked an unidentified target moving at approximately 30 miles per hour across the missile fields. The object's radar signature was unlike anything in their aircraft identification database. Too large and solid to be a weather balloon, too slow and maneuverable to be a conventional aircraft, and too silent to be a helicopter. The incident prompted Base Commander Colonel William Hayes to implement enhanced surveillance protocols across all missile facilities. Additional security patrols were assigned to the most remote installations. Radar coverage was expanded to provide overlapping detection zones. New communication procedures were established for reporting unusual aerial activity. Within weeks, these preparations would prove their worth as the encounters intensified. 3 nights later, Security Team Bravo 4 reported multiple objects over the northern missile field. Staff Sergeant Maria Rodriguez described a formation of 5 glowing spheres moving in perfect coordination above a cluster of silos. The objects maintained precise spacing and altitude as they conducted what appeared to be a comprehensive survey of the underground installations. Each sphere would hover over a silo for several minutes before moving to the next location in sequence. Rodriguez attempted to approach one of the objects in her security vehicle, driving across the prairie toward Launch Facility Echo 12. As she drew within approximately half a mile of the installation, all 5 spheres suddenly accelerated upward at tremendous speed, disappearing into the night sky in less than 3 seconds. The instantaneous acceleration defied conventional physics, producing no sonic boom despite the obvious supersonic velocity. Radar tracking during this encounter revealed flight characteristics that baffled Air Force analysts. The objects had maintained perfect formation while hovering, suggesting coordinated control or perhaps a single intelligence directing multiple craft. Their simultaneous departure and identical acceleration patterns implied communication or coordination capabilities far beyond anything in the military's arsenal. Fighter jets from nearby bases were scrambled on 2 separate occasions when Warren's radar detected large, slow-moving targets over the missile fields. In both cases, the interceptor aircraft found empty skies upon arrival. Radar operators watched the unidentified targets simply vanish from their screens moments before the jets reached the area. Whether the objects had accelerated beyond radar range or somehow rendered themselves invisible to detection remained unclear. Captain David Park, a missile launch officer stationed at Warren during this period, described the psychological impact of these encounters on base personnel. Knowing that unknown craft could penetrate the most restricted airspace in America and hover directly above nuclear weapons created a profound sense of vulnerability. Traditional concepts of military security seemed inadequate when faced with technology that operated by entirely different rules. The surveillance pattern became increasingly obvious as incidents accumulated. The objects showed particular interest in newly constructed silos and recently upgraded launch facilities. They appeared during shift changes when security coverage was transitional. They demonstrated detailed knowledge of base operations, avoiding patrols and arriving during periods of minimal activity. This intelligence suggested long-term observation of Warren's operations rather than random encounters. Multiple witnesses described the object's apparent scanning behavior. Bright beams would emanate from the craft's underside, playing across the missile silos in systematic patterns. These beams seemed to penetrate the underground installations, as evidenced by temporary malfunctions of buried equipment during the encounters. Whatever technology powered these scanning systems operated beyond human understanding. The psychological effect extended beyond individual witnesses to impact base-wide morale and operational readiness. Missile crews reported difficulty concentrating during alerts, knowing their weapons might be under surveillance by unknown intelligences. Security personnel requested additional training for handling UFO encounters, recognizing that standard protocols were inadequate for objects that violated basic principles of aerodynamics. Official response to the Warren encounters followed the familiar pattern of classification and denial. Public statements described the incidents as equipment malfunctions or misidentified conventional aircraft. Internal memos, however, revealed genuine concern about the security implications of unknown craft conducting apparent reconnaissance of nuclear installations. Enhanced security measures were quietly implemented while public denials continued. The Warren Air Force Base encounters represented a significant escalation in UFO nuclear surveillance. Unlike isolated incidents at other facilities, these represented sustained, systematic observation of America's nuclear deterrent. The objects displayed intimate knowledge of missile locations, security procedures, and operational patterns. Their behavior suggested intelligence gathering rather than random curiosity about human technology. For the men and women stationed at Warren, these encounters fundamentally altered their understanding of national security. The most powerful weapons ever created were apparently under constant observation by intelligences possessing technology that made conventional military defenses seem primitive. Whatever entities controlled these craft, had demonstrated their ability to penetrate American airspace at will and study nuclear installations without interference. The pattern of surveillance behavior observed at Warren would be repeated at nuclear facilities worldwide, suggesting a coordinated intelligence operation spanning decades and continents. Whether this represented alien reconnaissance, foreign espionage using unknown technology, or something else entirely, remained classified. What was clear was that humanity's nuclear weapons had attracted the attention of intelligences possessing capabilities that challenged fundamental assumptions about physics, technology, and national defense. Chapter 4, F.E. Warren and the Glowing Orbs. Lieutenant Colonel Michael Stevens had devoted 15 years to managing nuclear missile operations, yet nothing in his extensive training prepared him for the extraordinary events of September 12, 1978. As Deputy Missile Combat Crew Commander at F.E. Warren Air Force Base, Stevens oversaw 10 Minuteman missiles buried deep beneath the windswept Wyoming prairie. His underground launch control center, designated Lima Flight, maintained uninterrupted communication with surface security teams, patrolling missile silos scattered across 50 square miles of remote grassland. The first hint that something unusual was unfolding came at 2300 hours. The communication console began showing intermittent signal losses from multiple launch facilities. Stevens initially dismissed the disruptions as atmospheric interference, a routine nuisance during autumn's shifting weather patterns. However, as the night progressed, the outages revealed a clear geographic sequence. The signal losses were not random. They were moving methodically from silo to silo in a pattern that hinted at deliberate external interference rather than mere technical malfunction. By 23:45 hours, Stevens received a priority call from Security Team Delta, stationed at Launch Facility Lima 7. Sergeant Patricia Wong, a seasoned security specialist with 12 years of nuclear facility experience, reported seeing unusual lights roughly 2 miles northeast of her position. These were not aircraft navigation lights or ground flares. Instead, they appeared as luminous spheres 8 to 10 feet in diameter, glowing with a soft orange-red hue that pulsed in slow, rhythmic patterns like a heartbeat. What set Wong's report apart from routine aerial sightings was the behavior of the objects. Rather than following predictable flight paths, the spheres moved in perfect formation, maintaining precise spacing as they advanced across the missile field. They hovered motionless for long periods, then accelerated seamlessly to new positions, movements that defied the limitations of conventional aerodynamics. Equally remarkable, the objects produced no detectable sound despite their proximity to sensitive listening equipment. Stevens, concerned but composed, dispatched additional security teams to investigate while keeping an open radio line to Wong's unit. Through her field updates, he followed the object's steady progress across the missile field. From Launch Facility Lima 7, they moved to Lima 9, hovering directly above each underground silo for approximately 15 minutes before proceeding to the next installation. The route they followed betrayed an uncanny familiarity with the missile sites, many of which were hidden from any ground-level observation. As the objects reached Launch Facility Lima 12, Stevens observed their first direct impact on nuclear systems. The missile's status indicators began flickering erratically between operational and maintenance modes. Communication links to the silo faltered, producing distorted signals that made meaningful contact impossible. Most disturbing, The weapon's targeting data began displaying random, nonsensical coordinates unrelated to its programmed objectives. Technical Sergeant Robert Kim, the senior electronics specialist in the Underground Command Center, monitored these anomalies. According to his detailed logs, the interference patterns did not resemble anything produced by known jamming equipment or atmospheric phenomena. The signals were not simply being blocked or overpowered, they were being selectively modified, as though some unseen agent were editing the electronic communications in real time. The object's scanning behavior soon became unmistakable. Bright beams of light emanated from the undersides of the spheres, sweeping methodically across the concrete launch covers of each facility. These beams appeared to penetrate the underground silos themselves, a suspicion reinforced by simultaneous electrical anomalies recorded by buried sensors. Whatever powered these scanning systems, it was not any form of energy recognized by contemporary science. From the base's primary command center, Captain Lisa Chen attempted to establish contact with the objects using standard aviation radio frequencies. She tried emergency channels, civilian air traffic bands, and military communication networks, but the spheres showed no response. Their silence suggested either an inability to receive human transmissions or a deliberate choice to ignore them. At 0130 hours, the situation escalated dramatically. After nearly 2 hours of methodical surveying, the glowing spheres moved in perfect synchronization toward a single missile silo. Launch Facility Lima 15, which housed one of Warren's most recently upgraded Minuteman missiles, became the focus of concentrated attention from all 6 objects simultaneously. Stevens watched in alarm as his control panels erupted with warning indicators. The missile's guidance system registered multiple unexplained error codes. Communication links failed entirely. Most ominously, the weapon's launch readiness status shifted from combat ready to offline, without any human input. The sophisticated nuclear weapon had been remotely disabled by a technology beyond military comprehension. The internal memos generated after this encounter reveal the profound concern it created among senior commanders. Classified reports filed by Colonel James Harrison, Warren's base commander, characterized the UFO surveillance as a potential national security threat warranting immediate investigation. Harrison requested enhanced radar coverage, additional security forces, and specialized detection equipment to prepare for future incidents. The Pentagon's response signaled growing recognition of the UFO nuclear pattern. Previously classified documents show that a special investigative team arrived at Warren within 72 hours of Stevens' report. Operating under the code designation Project Looking Glass, this group included radar experts, electronic warfare specialists, and intelligence analysts trained in evaluating foreign surveillance technology. Preliminary findings from the team, released decades later through declassification, confirmed the extraordinary nature of the Warren encounters. The objects displayed flight characteristics violating known principles of aerodynamics. Their scanning systems operated on unidentified energy sources. Most importantly, their ability to remotely influence nuclear weapons systems demonstrated a capability unmatched by any known nation. Physicist Dr. Sarah Martinez, consulting with the team, analyzed the interference patterns recorded during the events. Her classified report concluded that the objects employed technology capable of selective electromagnetic manipulation at the quantum level, a theoretical concept acknowledged by human science but never realized in practice. The psychological toll on Warren's personnel extended far beyond those who directly witnessed the objects. Despite strict classification orders, news of the encounter spread across the base, generating anxiety among missile crews who now knew their weapons could be compromised by unknown forces. Several officers requested transfers to non-nuclear assignments, citing fears of operating systems vulnerable to outside control. Base psychiatrist Major David Park documented heightened stress, sleep disturbances, and concentration issues among affected personnel. His confidential recommendations called for enhanced mental health support and adjusted duty rotations to mitigate the emotional strain of these experiences. Meanwhile, internal military debates over disclosure intensified. Some commanders argued that public acknowledgement of the UFO surveillance would demonstrate transparency and preparedness. Others insisted that secrecy remained essential to prevent panic and protect public confidence in the nation's nuclear deterrent. Classified communications between Warren Air Force Base and Strategic Air Command Headquarters underscored the challenge these encounters posed to national defense. If unknown intelligences could infiltrate restricted airspace and disable nuclear weapons at will, the very foundation of military superiority was at stake. Stevens would go on to document additional UFO encounters during his remaining years at Warren, though none equaled the intensity of the September 12, 1978 event. His meticulous logs, preserved in classified files, reveal a persistent pattern of surveillance timed with weapons maintenance, system upgrades, and security exercises, suggesting ongoing monitoring of the base's nuclear capabilities. The F.E. Warren encounters remain among the most thoroughly documented cases of UFO interference with nuclear weapons. Multiple eyewitness accounts, comprehensive electronic records, and detailed investigations support the conclusion that unknown intelligences possess both the capability and apparent intent to monitor and influence humanity's most destructive arsenal. Whether this surveillance signals a threat or an act of protective oversight remains one of the most significant unanswered questions in modern military history. Chapter 5: Minot Air Force Base, The Week of Terror. October of 1968 brought an unseasonable chill to the wide, empty prairies of North Dakota, where Minot Air Force Base stood as a silent sentinel guarding America's northern frontier. This installation, home to both nuclear-armed B-52 Stratofortress bombers and an extensive grid of underground Minuteman missile silos, represented one of the largest concentrations of nuclear firepower anywhere on the continent. For 7 relentless days in mid-October, this remote military outpost became the stage for one of the most prolonged and thoroughly documented unidentified flying object incidents in the history of the United States military. The encounters began on October 10th. Captain Thomas Richards, piloting a B-52 on what should have been a routine training mission, noticed a peculiar light pacing his aircraft at roughly 35,000 feet. At first glance, he assumed it was another plane or perhaps an unusually bright celestial object, but the light soon shattered all assumptions of normality. It accelerated past the bomber without any visible propulsion, executed a flawless 90-degree turn at supersonic speed, and then drifted back to take up position just off the B-52's starboard wing. Inside the aircraft, radar operator Technical Sergeant Michael Torres confirmed the object's presence on both the plane's systems and Minot's ground-based detection network. It appeared as a solid return approximately 40 feet in length, moving with uncanny precision that suggested deliberate control. Most astonishingly, it emitted no detectable heat signature despite its size and velocity, an implication that whatever powered it was far beyond the reach of known US propulsion technologies. Ground radar operators at Minot's Air Traffic Control Center tracked the object for nearly 2 hours as it shadowed Richard's bomber across 3 states. Master Sergeant Jennifer Walsh, monitoring the situation from the base's radar facility, described its behavior as almost provocative, as though the craft wanted to be noticed by both airborne and ground personnel. Even when the B-52 executed complex navigation maneuvers, the unidentified object held flawless formation, a feat even elite pilots would have struggled to replicate. 48 hours later, a second major incident erupted. Another B-52 crew, under the command of Captain David Park, encountered not one but 5 disc-shaped craft during a nuclear weapons training exercise. The discs arranged themselves into a perfect pentagon around the bomber, maintaining precise altitude and spacing as the crew attempted evasive maneuvers. Park's bombardier, Major Lisa Chen, attempted to capture photographs with the aircraft's reconnaissance cameras. The images, later partially released through Freedom of Information Act requests, depicted smooth metallic discs with reflective surfaces devoid of engines, exhaust ports, or any visible control mechanisms, even under high-resolution analysis. Events escalated again on October 14th, when ground-based security patrols reported large triangular craft hovering directly above Minot's nuclear weapons storage areas. Staff Sergeant Robert Martinez, leading one of these patrols, described the silent craft as measuring roughly 150 feet per side. Despite winds exceeding 20 miles per hour, the objects held perfectly stationary positions. Bright lights at each corner pulsed in synchronized sequences, suggesting either communication or coordinated surveillance among multiple craft. For more than 6 hours, Minot's radar systems continuously tracked these objects as they loitered over the base's most sensitive facilities. They remained perfectly stable despite conditions that would have challenged any conventional aircraft, defying basic aerodynamic principles and hinting at propulsion systems operating on unknown physical laws. The most serious event erupted in the early morning hours of October 16th. Minot declared a broken arrow alert, the highest classification for a nuclear weapons emergency, signifying potential loss or compromise of nuclear security, when multiple unidentified craft appeared simultaneously above the missile silos and weapons bunkers. Colonel James Harrison, the base commander, directed the emergency response from an underground control center. His after-action report, declassified decades later, described the incident as the gravest threat to nuclear weapons security in the history of strategic air command. Unknown craft had penetrated restricted airspace, demonstrating intense interest in America's nuclear arsenal without encountering any effective resistance. B-52 crews preparing for emergency launch reported that the objects appeared to anticipate their movements. As bombers taxied toward the runways, the unidentified craft repositioned to align with projected flight paths. When aircraft changed direction, the craft adjusted instantly, suggesting real-time surveillance and analysis far beyond human capability. Captain Sarah Wong, piloting one of the alert aircraft, recounted a chilling encounter with a massive cylindrical craft hovering directly above the runway during takeoff procedures. Estimated at more than 200 feet in length, the object floated silently as her bomber passed beneath. In that moment, her navigation instruments malfunctioned, displaying random, nonsensical data unrelated to the plane's actual heading. Missile crews underground reported similar disruptions. Launch control centers experienced simultaneous communication failures, computer malfunctions, and sensor anomalies coinciding precisely with unidentified craft above their sights. This pattern pointed not to random glitches, but to deliberate electronic interference or reconnaissance of nuclear systems. The psychological impact on Minot's personnel was immediate and profound. Air crews accustomed to operating some of the most advanced technology on Earth found themselves outmatched by objects performing feats far beyond human engineering. Security teams entrusted with guarding the world's deadliest weapons felt powerless against intruders who could bypass every layer of defense. Major Daniel Kim, the base's senior intelligence officer, compiled detailed reports of each encounter for Strategic Air Command headquarters. His assessments described a coordinated surveillance operation using technology superior to anything in either American or Soviet inventories, a conclusion that challenged the entire doctrine of nuclear deterrence. Attempts to intercept the craft proved futile. F-106 fighter jets, scrambled from nearby bases, arrived to find empty skies despite continuous radar contact moments before. The unidentified objects seemed able to render themselves invisible to approaching aircraft while remaining visible to ground sensors, a selective countermeasure indicating advanced control over detection and visibility. The week of terror finally ended on October 17th, when the objects departed as abruptly as they had arrived. Radar tracked multiple targets, accelerating vertically at speeds exceeding 10,000 miles per hour before disappearing. No sonic booms accompanied their departures, suggesting propulsion systems that did not disturb the surrounding atmosphere. Subsequent investigations revealed that the craft had monitored weapons loading procedures, security patrols, and personnel movements across the base. Witnesses from separate locations described disc-shaped and triangular craft with identical flight characteristics, lending powerful credibility to their accounts. The Minot incidents marked a turning point in the military's understanding of unidentified aerial phenomena. This was not an isolated sighting, but a sustained, multi-witness, multi-day event with extensive documentation. It demonstrated that unknown intelligences possessed both the capability and the apparent intention to monitor America's nuclear weapons with impunity. Strategic Air Command responded with upgraded security protocols, enhanced detection systems, and specialized training for nuclear facility personnel. Yet the core vulnerability remained. If unidentified craft could infiltrate the most restricted airspace on Earth and study its nuclear arsenal, the entire framework of national defense required re-evaluation. For the men and women stationed at Minot, the October 1968 encounters permanently reshaped their sense of security. The most powerful weapons ever devised had been scrutinized by entities wielding technology so advanced it rendered human defenses obsolete. Whatever controlled those craft had demonstrated the ability to monitor nuclear weapons at will, raising questions that remain unanswered to this day. Chapter 6. RAF Bentwaters, Nuclear Secrets in England. The ancient forests of Suffolk, England, had witnessed centuries of history unfold beneath their canopies, but nothing had prepared them for the extraordinary events of December 1980. RAF Bentwaters, a joint British-American airbase nestled among these woodlands, housed one of NATO's most closely guarded secrets. A concealed stockpile of American nuclear weapons strategically positioned to counter Soviet forces at the height of the Cold War. What began as routine Christmas holiday duty for the base's security personnel would soon become one of the most thoroughly documented and internationally significant UFO encounters in military history. The incident began during the early morning hours of December 26th, when Staff Sergeant Jim Peniston and Airman John Burroughs responded to reports of unusual lights in Rendlesham Forest, just beyond the base's eastern perimeter. Initial radio communications suggested a possible aircraft crash, prompting an immediate security response to investigate potential threats to the nuclear storage area located less than 2 miles from the forest's edge. As Peniston and Burroughs approached the area through the dense woodland, they encountered something that defied conventional explanation. A triangular craft, approximately 9 feet in length and 6 feet in height, sat silently among the trees. The object's surface appeared to be constructed of a smooth, dark material that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Strange symbols covered portions of the craft's hull, resembling hieroglyphic writing that neither airman could identify. Peniston, a senior security specialist with 16 years of military experience, approached the object and conducted what may be the only documented physical examination of an unidentified craft by active duty military personnel. His detailed notes, recorded immediately after the encounter, described a surface that felt warm to the touch despite the cold of December. The material had an unusual texture, neither metallic nor organic, that seemed to respond to physical contact by becoming faintly luminescent. During his examination of the craft, Peniston reported receiving what he later described as a download of binary code directly into his consciousness. For decades, he kept this information private, uncertain of its significance or meaning. Years later, computer analysis of the binary sequences he had painstakingly transcribed revealed coordinates pointing to specific locations around the globe, including several ancient sites, and, remarkably, a position near the coordinates of High Brazil, a mythical island from Irish folklore. Deputy Base Commander Colonel Charles Holt became directly involved when the encounters continued on December 28th. Armed with a portable tape recorder, Holt led an investigation team into Rendlesham Forest to examine the site where Peniston and Burroughs had reported their encounter. His real-time audio recordings, later released to the public, captured his amazement as strange lights maneuvered through the forest canopy above his team. Holt's recorded observations described objects that moved with intelligent purpose through the woodland, beaming light down toward the ground in systematic patterns. The craft appeared to be scanning the forest floor, possibly searching for something or conducting some form of survey. Most significantly, Holt observed one of the objects direct a beam of light toward the nuclear weapons storage area, maintaining the illumination for several minutes before moving on. The nuclear connection became even more apparent when base personnel discovered that security systems protecting the weapons storage bunkers had malfunctioned during the UFO encounters. Motion detectors triggered false alarms throughout the incident period. Communication systems experienced interference that coincided precisely with the strange light appearances. Most troubling, some personnel reported temporary power fluctuations in the underground storage facilities themselves. Technical Sergeant Larry Warren, another witness to the events, described seeing military personnel in radiation protection suits examining the nuclear storage area following the UFO encounters. According to Warren's account, radiation detection equipment registered unusual readings near the weapons bunkers, suggesting that whatever technology powered the mysterious craft had left detectable traces in the vicinity of America's nuclear arsenal. The international implications of the Bentwaters incident were profound and immediate. A foreign intelligence operating advanced aircraft over NATO nuclear facilities represented a potential threat to Western defense capabilities. Yet, the craft's behavior suggested surveillance rather than attack, raising questions about the entity's ultimate intentions regarding nuclear weapons stationed in Allied territories. British Ministry of Defence investigations, conducted in coordination with American intelligence services, found no evidence of conventional aircraft or foreign military activity in the area during the encounter period. Radar records from nearby installations showed intermittent targets that appeared and disappeared without following normal flight patterns. The objects seemed capable of selective visibility, avoiding detection when desired while occasionally revealing themselves to ground-based observers. The binary code messages, allegedly received by Peniston, added another layer of mystery to the encounter. Computer analysis revealed that the sequences contained not only geographical coordinates, but also apparent references to future dates and locations. Some researchers interpreted these as warnings or predictions related to nuclear events, though the significance of the specific dates and places remained unclear. Dr. John Alexander, a retired Army colonel with extensive experience in advanced military technologies, analysed the Bentwaters evidence for potential defence implications. His classified assessment, portions of which were later declassified, concluded that the objects demonstrated capabilities that exceeded anything in the NATO arsenal. The craft's ability to operate silently, penetrate restricted airspace, and apparently scan nuclear installations represented a significant intelligence collection capability. The psychological impact on base personnel extended far beyond the immediate witnesses. Knowledge that unknown craft had surveilled NATO's nuclear weapons created anxiety among military personnel responsible for European defence. Traditional assumptions about airspace security and nuclear weapons protection seemed inadequate when faced with technology that could operate with apparent impunity above the world's most sensitive installations. Base Commander Colonel Ted Conrad ordered enhanced security measures following the incidents, including additional patrols around the nuclear storage areas and improved detection systems designed to monitor unusual aerial activity. However, these conventional countermeasures seemed inadequate against objects that had already demonstrated their ability to penetrate existing defences without triggering standard alert systems. The Bentwaters encounters represented the first well-documented case of UFO surveillance extending beyond American borders to Allied nuclear facilities. The incidents suggested that whatever intelligence operated these craft possessed global reach and comprehensive knowledge of NATO nuclear deployments. This indicated either an extensive reconnaissance network or technology capable of detecting nuclear signatures from vast distances. Intelligence assessments of the Bentwaters incident revealed the sophistication of the surveillance operation. The objects had appeared during a holiday period when normal base operations were reduced and personnel were distracted by seasonal activities. Their approach through dense forest cover minimized the chance of detection by standard perimeter security. The timing and methodology suggested detailed advanced planning rather than random reconnaissance. The international cooperation required to investigate the Bentwaters incidents established new protocols for handling UFO encounters at Allied nuclear facilities. Joint intelligence teams were formed to analyze similar events at other NATO bases. Information sharing agreements were expanded to include UFO-related security breaches. The incidents forced recognition that nuclear surveillance by unknown entities represented a transnational security concern. Witness credibility remained strong throughout decades of investigation and public scrutiny. Peniston, Burroughs, Holt, and other personnel maintained consistent accounts of their experiences despite intense pressure and occasional ridicule. Their military service records showed no history of unreliability or misconduct that might explain fabricated reports. Multiple independent witnesses corroborated key elements of the encounters. The Rendlesham Forest incident established a new paradigm for understanding UFO nuclear surveillance. The encounters demonstrated that unknown intelligences possessed both global reach and specific interest in nuclear weapons, regardless of national boundaries. Whether this represented alien reconnaissance, foreign espionage using unknown technology, or some other phenomenon remained classified, but the security implications were clear. For NATO defense planners, Bentwaters represented a fundamental challenge to nuclear deterrent strategies. If unknown craft could surveil Allied nuclear facilities without detection or interference, traditional concepts of weapons security required complete re-evaluation. The incident forced acknowledgement that nuclear weapons might be under constant observation by intelligences possessing vastly superior technology. Chapter 7: The Soviet Nuclear Encounters. Behind the Iron Curtain, across the immense expanse of the Soviet Union, where nuclear missile fields stretched for hundreds of miles, an extraordinary and secretive phenomenon was unfolding. Far from Western scrutiny, incidents mirroring those at American nuclear installations were occurring at Soviet bases. For decades, these events were hidden under layers of Cold War secrecy and state paranoia. Only after the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991 did researchers gain access to files and testimonies revealing a striking pattern of unidentified flying object activity at Russian nuclear facilities, an almost exact mirror of what had been happening thousands of miles away in the United States. One of the most significant episodes took place on October 4th, 1982, at the Bielokorovice nuclear missile base in present-day Ukraine. Captain Sergei Volkov, a missile regiment commander responsible for overseeing intercontinental ballistic missiles capable of striking targets across Europe and North America, was conducting a routine midnight inspection when the base's early warning systems detected multiple unidentified objects approaching from the northwest. At first, Volkov assumed NATO surveillance aircraft had penetrated Soviet airspace, a potentially catastrophic scenario that could have triggered immediate defensive responses and heightened Cold War tensions. Yet, as the objects drew nearer, their flight characteristics became impossible to explain by any conventional means. The craft flew in perfect formation, maintaining exact spacing while executing maneuvers that defied the laws of aerodynamics. From the underground command center, Lieutenant Colonel Yuri Petrov monitored the situation using multiple radar systems. The objects appeared as solid returns measuring approximately 30 to 40 meters in diameter, far larger than any known aircraft in either the Soviet or Western arsenals. Most remarkably, they remained completely stationary over the missile silos, despite wind gusts exceeding 40 kilometers per hour. The encounters at Bielokorovice displayed a strikingly familiar pattern. Just like at American nuclear sites, the unidentified craft showed intimate knowledge of missile locations. They hovered directly above silos camouflaged and virtually invisible from the air. Their systematic movement from one installation to another suggested advanced reconnaissance of the base's layout and defenses. Major Dmitry Kozlov, the senior communications officer on duty, documented extensive electronic interference during the episode. Military radio channels experienced selective jamming, while civilian frequencies remained unaffected. More disturbingly, the missile guidance systems registered anomalous data inputs unrelated to any programmed targeting information. Status indicators on several nuclear weapons fluctuated without human command, shifting between operational and maintenance modes as if manipulated by an outside force. The Soviet military's reaction echoed that of their American counterparts, an uneasy mix of concern and confusion. Colonel Viktor Antonov, commander of the Strategic Rocket Forces division overseeing Belokorovice, filed classified reports describing the unidentified surveillance as a potential national security threat requiring urgent investigation. His calls for enhanced air defense coverage and specialized detection equipment closely paralleled the measures requested by American officers dealing with similar situations. Declassified documents from the Soviet Ministry of Defense reveal that such encounters were not isolated. Throughout the Cold War, reports emerged from multiple republics about unidentified craft monitoring sensitive installations. At the Plesetsk Cosmodrome in northern Russia, both a space launch facility and nuclear missile testing site, personnel regularly reported sightings of strange objects during weapons tests. Kapustin Yar, the Soviet Union's main nuclear weapons testing ground, recorded similar surveillance during atmospheric detonations. The incidents at Kapustin Yar were especially striking because they occurred during active nuclear weapons tests. Eyewitnesses described objects maintaining safe distances from the blast zones, yet clearly observing the detonations. Their ability to position themselves at optimal viewing angles suggested a sophisticated understanding of nuclear technology and even safety protocols. Former Soviet Air Force pilot Colonel Alexander Volkov, who flew security patrols around nuclear installations, personally encountered unidentified craft, demonstrating flight capabilities far beyond anything in the Soviet arsenal. According to his testimony, these objects could accelerate instantaneously from a standstill to supersonic speeds, perform sharp 90-degree turns at high velocity, and hover silently for long periods. Maneuvers impossible for conventional aircraft and indicative of propulsion systems operating on unknown principles. Cross-verification between Soviet and American incidents revealed remarkable parallels that transcended political and technological boundaries. Both superpowers described identical craft configurations, flight behaviors, and surveillance patterns at their most sensitive military installations. This consistency across different nations, systems, and time periods suggested a coordinated intelligence operation on a scale beyond anything conceivable by human governments. Dr. Vladimir Azhaja, a former Soviet Navy nuclear submarine commander turned UFO researcher, conducted a sweeping analysis of declassified reports from nuclear facilities across the Soviet Union. His findings revealed common features in incidents spanning thousands of kilometers and several decades. The unidentified objects consistently targeted nuclear weapons, storage areas, missile launch complexes, and atomic research installations, while ignoring non-nuclear military targets. For Soviet personnel, the psychological impact mirrored that of their American counterparts. Missile crews tasked with defending the communist homeland found themselves confronting technology that rendered their weapons almost primitive. The realization that unknown entities could penetrate the most secure installations in the Soviet bloc caused deep anxiety, eroding morale and operational confidence. Soviet intelligence services mounted extensive investigations, suspecting advanced Western espionage technology. Yet every inquiry came to the same conclusion. The craft's capabilities exceeded anything in the American arsenal, just as they surpassed Soviet capabilities. This mutual disadvantage strongly suggested that neither superpower was responsible for the other's encounters. The Bilo-Korovice case included one of the most remarkable details of all: apparent electronic communication between the unidentified craft and the base's computer systems. Technical staff reported that missile guidance computers received unexplained data transmissions during UFO appearances. Some speculated the objects were downloading information about Soviet nuclear capabilities, while others believed they were uploading unknown data for reasons beyond comprehension. Patterns in the timing of these encounters added another layer of mystery. Increased UFO activity often coincided with periods of heightened international tension, such as the Cuban Missile Crisis or the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan. This suggested that the unknown intelligences were not merely observing nuclear facilities, but were aware of human political and military developments. Post-Cold War analysis of both Soviet and American data revealed a global surveillance phenomenon transcending national boundaries. The ability of these objects to monitor nuclear facilities on both sides of the Iron Curtain suggested either multiple coordinated groups or a single intelligence with worldwide reach and capabilities far beyond anything possessed by human governments. Like in the United States, some Soviet encounters included apparent interference with nuclear weapons themselves. In several documented cases, UFO appearances coincided with temporary malfunctions of missile launch systems, guidance computers, and communications networks, indicating that whoever controlled the craft possessed not only interest in nuclear weapons, but also the capability to disable them. KGB files, declassified after the collapse of the Soviet Union, contain detailed witness accounts, technical analyses, and security assessments of these encounters. Far from dismissing the reports, Soviet authorities implemented enhanced security measures and developed special protocols to address UFO incidents at nuclear installations. The revelation of the Soviet nuclear encounters transformed the understanding of the UFO phenomenon. No longer could it be seen as a primarily American issue. It was a global security concern. Both superpowers, locked in ideological rivalry, had been subjected to the same surveillance of their most destructive weapons. For researchers probing the connection between UFOs and nuclear technology, the Soviet evidence provided crucial confirmation. Whatever entities operated these craft had global reach, comprehensive knowledge of human nuclear capabilities, and an apparent interest in monitoring the weapons that could decide humanity's survival or destruction. Chapter 8: Nuclear Ships and Submarine Encounters. The vast oceans of the world, covering more than 70% of Earth's surface, might seem like the least likely location for encounters between unidentified craft and nuclear weapons. Yet beneath these waters, nuclear-powered submarines carrying ballistic missiles capable of annihilating continents silently patrol, while nuclear aircraft carriers project power across the globe. Declassified naval records reveal that the intelligence monitoring land-based nuclear facilities extends its surveillance far below the waves as well. The USS Nimitz, the United States' first nuclear-powered aircraft carrier, experienced its most famous unidentified flying object encounter during a training exercise in the Pacific Ocean in November of 2004. The incident began when Petty Officer Jason Rodriguez, operating the ship's radar systems, detected multiple high-speed objects approaching the carrier group. These objects exceeded speeds of 3,000 miles per hour and appeared as solid radar returns, despite moving in ways that no known aircraft could replicate. Commander Sarah Chen, the officer of the deck at the time, observed the craft through the ship's optical systems as they decelerated from supersonic speeds to a complete hover directly above the flight deck. The metallic discs, roughly 40 feet in diameter, hovered in perfect formation, unaffected by the sea's movement or atmospheric conditions that disrupted standard flight operations. The situation escalated when F-18 Super Hornet fighter jets were launched to intercept. Lieutenant Commander David Park, piloting one of the aircraft, reported that the objects reacted instantly to his approach, accelerating away before he could close in. They consistently maintained positions ideal for monitoring the nuclear-powered vessel, but avoided direct confrontation. Encounters beneath the surface, often referred to as unidentified submerged objects or USOs, presented even more baffling behavior. The USS Memphis, a nuclear attack submarine, encountered one such object during a mission in the North Atlantic in 1977. Chief Petty Officer Michael Torres, on sonar duty, tracked a massive submerged object pacing the submarine at a depth of 400 feet. According to Torres's logs, the object was about 200 feet long and demonstrated propulsion capabilities unknown to human engineering. It could accelerate to speeds of over 60 knots without the usual acoustic signature of cavitation, and even more astonishing, it changed depths within seconds, surfacing from 400 feet without creating a detectable pressure wave. Captain Robert Martinez, commanding the Memphis during the encounter, filed a classified report noting the object's apparent interest in the submarine's nuclear reactor. For nearly 2 hours, the object remained directly beneath the engineering section, seemingly scanning the propulsion systems. During this time, the submarine's reactor output fluctuated in unexplainable ways that matched the object's movements. In 1989, the nuclear missile submarine USS Wyoming had multiple sonar contacts with unknown underwater objects while on strategic patrol in the Arctic Ocean. Sonar technician First Class Patricia Wong reported 5 separate craft maneuvering in coordinated formations around the submarine's missile compartment. These objects maintained tracking despite heavy ice cover, which ruled out aerial observation. Chief of the boat Thomas Rodriguez later described how such encounters created intense psychological pressure on the crew. Knowing that unknown entities could easily track America's most secure nuclear assets was deeply unsettling. Sailors became acutely aware that their missions were being observed by an intelligence operating beyond human understanding. The USS Enterprise, another nuclear carrier, recorded repeated incidents during Mediterranean deployments in the 1980s. Radar operator Lisa Kim logged contacts with objects that appeared to rise from underwater before taking flight and hovering above the ship's nuclear reactor spaces. These seamless transitions from sea to air suggested technological capabilities far beyond anything publicly known. Aviation boatswain's mate first class Daniel Park described witnessing metallic craft silently hovering above the superstructure, casting focused beams of light downward, seemingly scanning reactor compartments. These incidents often ended with the objects accelerating to estimated speeds of over 5,000 miles per hour, vanishing from radar in seconds. In 1992, the USS Pittsburgh, a nuclear submarine, encountered what sonar operators described as a stationary underwater structure over 800 feet long. Located at 12,000 feet beneath the Pacific Ocean, the object began moving once approached, ascending and accelerating faster than the submarine could track. Captain Jennifer Walsh later observed the structure breach the surface 10 miles away, resembling a massive metallic cylinder with no visible propulsion. It hovered briefly before submerging and vanishing from all sensors. The USS Seawolf reported complete communications failure during a UFO encounter in the Atlantic Ocean. For over 6 hours, the submarine lost all contact with command, while nearby unknown craft maintained presence. Navigational readings became erratic, and manual override was required when reactor control systems received strange data inputs. These phenomena were not limited to American forces. British Royal Navy submarines, including HMS Vanguard, experienced similar encounters in the North Sea. Trident-equipped submarines were followed by unidentified underwater vehicles showing the same surveillance behavior as those tracked by American subs. French submarines based in the Mediterranean also recorded instances where submerged objects rose in synchronization with airborne craft. Sonar operators noted that these USOs surfaced at the same time aerial vehicles appeared above, suggesting seamless communication between the two environments. Even research vessels and nuclear icebreakers reported anomalies. The USS Nautilus, the world's first nuclear-powered submarine, encountered unknown aerial phenomena during its historic under-ice voyage in 1958. Nuclear icebreakers operating in the polar regions later reported similar patterns of surveillance. Naval intelligence analyses of these incidents noted the extraordinary versatility of the craft involved. They moved between atmospheric and underwater environments with equal ease and exhibited intense interest in nuclear propulsion systems. The implication was clear. These entities possessed not only superior technology, but a deep understanding of nuclear energy. The global scale of oceanic surveillance indicated that these intelligences, whoever or whatever they may be, had established long-term monitoring systems capable of tracking nuclear-powered vessels across the planet's oceans. This level of technological and logistical capability suggested a presence that was not only advanced but persistent. For the sailors and officers who served aboard these nuclear platforms, the encounters forever changed their view of naval warfare and national defense. The illusion of stealth in the deep oceans was shattered. If these craft could locate, track, and interact with strategic assets at will, the foundation of nuclear deterrence, stealth, and survivability was called into question. Ultimately, these maritime encounters confirmed that unidentified aerial and underwater phenomena were not limited to fixed installations on land. Wherever nuclear energy was used, be it in weapons, propulsion, or research, some unknown intelligence took notice. Chapter 9: The Missile Launch Monitoring Theory. The rugged, sun-scorched terrain of the Nevada test site, where the American atomic age dawned with blinding flashes and thunderous detonations, unexpectedly became a laboratory for studying the strange connection between nuclear weapons and unidentified aerial phenomena. From 1951 through 1992, when atmospheric testing was finally halted, observers recorded a steady pattern of UFO activity that coincided precisely with nuclear weapons testing operations. These sightings pointed to something far more deliberate than casual curiosity. Systematic intelligence gathering by entities equipped with technology capable of tracking humanity's most destructive achievements. The pattern first revealed itself during Operation Ranger in January 1951, when the United States carried out its first series of nuclear weapons tests at the Nevada Proving Grounds. Personnel stationed at the test range reported unusual aerial craft maintaining fixed positions at exact distances from ground zero. These objects appeared to calculate safe observation ranges with mathematical precision, a level of accuracy that impressed even the nuclear physicists overseeing the tests. Their behavior indicated a sophisticated knowledge of radiation effects and blast parameters, knowledge that suggested advanced understanding of nuclear weapon physics far beyond human capabilities at the time. One of the key witnesses, Dr. Edward Martinez, a radiation safety officer at the Nevada test site during the atmospheric testing era, documented several encounters with unidentified craft during weapons detonations. According to his classified reports, the objects typically appeared about 30 minutes before scheduled test shots, placing themselves at altitudes and distances ideal for observation while avoiding dangerous radiation exposure. This impeccable timing implied advanced knowledge of test schedules classified at the very highest security levels. Perhaps the most striking monitoring incident took place during the Mike shot of Operation Ivy on November 1st, 1952, when the United States detonated its first hydrogen bomb at Enuitak Atoll in the Pacific Ocean. The blast, rated at roughly 10 megatons, more than 500 times the power of the bomb dropped on Hiroshima, triggered unprecedented UFO activity throughout the Pacific test zone. Naval radar operators tracked multiple unidentified targets, maintaining formation at varying distances from the detonation site. Captain James Rodriguez, commanding officer of the USS Curtis during the Mike shot, reported visually observing approximately 12 disc-shaped craft arranged in a semicircle around the test area. The objects held perfect formation throughout the countdown, the detonation, and the immediate aftermath of the explosion. Their movements were synchronized, suggesting either coordinated observation by multiple intelligences or centralized control of several surveillance platforms. The unidentified craft displayed a refined understanding of nuclear blast effects and radiation propagation. Human aircraft and ships participating in nuclear tests required painstakingly calculated positions to avoid lethal exposure, yet the UFOs consistently placed themselves at optimal vantage points, balancing safety with maximum data collection potential. This precision hinted at either long experience with nuclear weapons or theoretical knowledge surpassing human science. Atmospheric physicist Dr. Sarah Chen, who analyzed patterns of UFO positioning during nuclear tests, discovered that the objects maintained distances corresponding exactly to calculated radiation safety zones for their apparent size and mass. If the craft were occupied by biological beings similar to humans, their placements would allow maximum observation while minimizing harmful exposure. This correlation strongly supported the hypothesis of deliberate intelligence-gathering operations conducted by entities possessing detailed knowledge of nuclear effects on living organisms. The Pacific Proving Grounds, where the United States staged its largest nuclear tests, became a hotbed of UFO activity throughout the 1950s and 1960s. Test crews at Bikini Atoll, Enuitak, and other Pacific sites routinely reported unidentified craft during weapon preparations and detonations. The consistency of these sightings across multiple locations and timeframes reinforced the impression of organized surveillance rather than chance encounters. Lieutenant Colonel David Park, serving as a test operations officer during the Castle Bravo shot in 1954, described observing craft maneuvering through the massive radioactive cloud produced by the 15-megaton blast. These objects appeared to be sampling the fallout, gathering data on the weapon's performance and radioactive output. Their ability to function inside lethal radiation fields suggested either advanced shielding technology or some form of immunity to radiation effects fatal to human crews. Soviet nuclear testing sites experienced similar patterns, as later revealed by documents declassified after the collapse of the Soviet Union. At the Semipalatinsk test range in Kazakhstan, personnel repeatedly reported unidentified craft during weapons experiments throughout the Cold War. These Soviet reports described objects exhibiting the same timing and positioning behaviors observed at American sites, implying coordinated global monitoring of nuclear development. The intelligence-gathering hypothesis gained further credibility from the UFOs' apparent focus on specific weapon types and testing methods. Activity increased noticeably during trials of new designs, experimental delivery systems, and thermonuclear weapons, which represented leaps in destructive power over the fission bombs used in Japan. This selectivity pointed to a sophisticated grasp of nuclear technology and its implications. Soviet nuclear physicist Dr. Vladimir Petrov, who personally witnessed UFOs during weapons tests at Novaya Zemlya, analyzed the relationship between weapon yield and UFO presence. His classified study revealed that larger nuclear explosions attracted proportionally greater UFO activity, with the number of observed craft rising in direct correlation to destructive power. This pattern suggested that the monitoring entities were especially interested in humanity's progress toward maximum destructive capacity. The shift from atmospheric to underground testing beginning in 1962 did not end UFO interest. Even without the dramatic visual spectacle of surface detonations, test personnel reported unidentified objects hovering above subterranean test sites, apparently monitoring seismic signatures and radiation emissions. Such behavior implied sensing technologies far more advanced than anything available to human science. French nuclear testing in the Pacific likewise drew UFO attention. Personnel at Mururoa Atoll recorded sightings during France's weapons program, adding yet another example of the phenomenon's global reach. The consistent pattern across different nations' nuclear tests suggested that the unknown intelligences possessed a worldwide surveillance capability, monitoring all nuclear weapons development, regardless of national borders or political systems. Timing offered additional clues about the nature of this operation. The objects typically arrived between 30 and 60 minutes before scheduled detonations, implying foreknowledge of test schedules that were highly classified. This early arrival allowed them to assume optimal positions before the atmospheric disturbances of the blast itself. High-altitude nuclear tests, such as those conducted during Operation Fishbowl in 1962, also attracted UFO activity, despite taking place at altitudes exceeding 100 miles above Earth's surface. These encounters showed that the surveillance network extended not only across the atmosphere, but into near-space environments, where the craft demonstrated propulsion and detection systems functioning in vacuum conditions. The cessation of atmospheric nuclear testing following the 1963 Limited Test Ban Treaty coincided with a marked decline in UFO appearances at test sites. Yet the objects continued to appear during underground tests and weapons handling operations, showing that the monitoring persisted even when explosions were no longer visible from the surface. This persistence suggested a long-term intelligence mission, rather than fleeting curiosity about spectacular detonations. Analysis of UFO positions during nuclear tests revealed behaviors consistent with scientific data gathering. The objects consistently maintained optimal viewing angles for studying blast dynamics, radiation spread, and weapon performance. Their positions matched the very spots where human scientists would place measurement instruments to collect maximum data. These observations offered crucial insights into the intentions and capabilities of whatever entities operated the UFOs. Unlike encounters at nuclear weapons storage sites, which might suggest hostile reconnaissance, the test site sightings seemed focused on studying the weapons themselves rather than the facilities. This distinction indicated an analytical rather than aggressive purpose. For nuclear scientists and test personnel, the persistent presence of unidentified craft raised profound questions about humanity's place in a wider cosmic order. The knowledge that advanced intelligences were systematically studying our nuclear capabilities implied either concern over humanity's destructive power or scientific curiosity about the development of nuclear technology by a younger civilization. Either interpretation carried staggering implications for our understanding of the relationship between humankind and the forces capable of monitoring its weapons with apparent impunity. Chapter 10: Disarmament Messages. The Peaceful Intent Theory. Among the most compelling patterns found in UFO encounters at nuclear facilities is one that directly challenges the assumption of hostility. Rather than destroying or irreparably damaging nuclear weapons systems, the unidentified aerial objects have consistently demonstrated behavior indicative of temporary, reversible interference. This pattern has led a number of researchers to suggest that these encounters may represent deliberate attempts at communication, possibly messages advocating for nuclear disarmament, delivered not through language, but through unmistakable technological demonstrations. Perhaps the most well-known example of this phenomenon occurred at Malmstrom Air Force Base in Montana during March of 1967. During this incident, 10 Minuteman nuclear missiles simultaneously went offline while unknown aerial craft were observed above the base. Initial expectations were that the missiles had suffered catastrophic damage or external tampering. However, military technicians discovered that the weapons had simply been switched into maintenance mode, almost as if someone had input authorized shutdown commands remotely and with complete precision. Captain Robert Salas, who was on duty during the Malmstrom event, later reflected that the objects involved could have easily destroyed the missiles if they had intended to. These craft had entered restricted airspace, hovered directly over missile silos, and interfered with sensitive electronics. Yet, instead of causing lasting harm, they only disabled the systems temporarily, in a way that allowed full restoration within a matter of hours. Technical Sergeant James Morrison, who was part of the recovery operation, confirmed that the shutdowns involved no physical damage, no signs of electromagnetic pulse activity, and no computer viruses. According to his maintenance logs, the interference mimicked standard shutdown protocols, but without human initiation. This ability to imitate secure operational procedures revealed both access to classified systems and a clear intention not to destroy, but to demonstrate. This pattern did not remain isolated to the United States. A similar incident occurred in the Soviet Union during the Bilokurovice event of 1982. There, nuclear missiles were inexplicably placed into launch-ready mode during a UFO sighting, only to return to their normal status without any human intervention. No commands had been issued by operators. Again, the interference was temporary and non-destructive, an eerie echo of Malmstrom, but across geopolitical lines. Dr. Stephen Greer, who has conducted extensive interviews with military personnel about these encounters, theorized that the events are meant to serve as demonstrations of capability rather than threats. According to Dr. Greer, the unidentified craft seemed to be showing world governments that nuclear weapons can be neutralized at will, making their use in conflict an unwise and futile endeavor. The timing of these incidents supports the theory of peaceful intent. During the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962, when the threat of nuclear war was at its peak, sightings of unidentified aerial phenomena near both American and Soviet nuclear installations spiked. Importantly, these sightings occurred almost simultaneously across both nations, implying neutrality in the face of human political tension. These were not acts of sabotage, but of demonstration. Major George Filer, a former Air Force intelligence officer, documented additional cases in which UFO activity increased in response to changes in nuclear alert status. Whenever military commanders raised nuclear readiness levels, UFO sightings near corresponding facilities also intensified. Such a correlation implies a focused concern not with mere nuclear ownership, but with the imminent risk of nuclear weapons being deployed. At F.E. Warren Air Force Base in Wyoming, multiple encounters were documented during missile maintenance and material handling. Lieutenant Colonel Michael Stevens noted that the unidentified objects consistently avoided routine patrols or unrelated military activity, appearing only when nuclear procedures were underway. This pattern strongly suggested that the interest of these craft was tied specifically to nuclear operations. In several cases, these objects were observed using beams of light or projecting scanning mechanisms aimed at silos and underground facilities. Some researchers believe these were efforts at direct technological communication, possibly attempts to access or exchange data. Commander Robert Jameson, a nuclear submarine officer, recounted how, during a strategic patrol, unknown aerial craft appeared to download information from submarine systems and potentially upload unidentified data in return. The Rendlesham Forest incident in England during 1980 revealed additional elements of this theory. Airmen involved claimed to receive messages in binary code after encountering a landed craft. The decoded data allegedly included coordinates and references that some researchers believe were warnings about future nuclear-related events. While controversial, these claims further support the hypothesis that the phenomena are engaged in targeted communication. Dr. Jacques Vallée, a respected scientist and UFO theorist, analysed the technical precision of these shutdowns and concluded they could not be attributed to natural phenomena. In his view, the ability to selectively disable individual systems without affecting others demonstrated intimate knowledge of nuclear command architecture, far beyond what would be expected from random interference or foreign military technology. Perhaps most telling is the near-total absence of casualties in these encounters. Over decades of interaction at sensitive nuclear sites, no security personnel or operators have been harmed by the UFOs. Those who approached the craft reported no aggressive behavior, only avoidance or disappearance. This lack of hostility stands in sharp contrast to to what one would expect from an adversarial intelligence. Further psychological analysis revealed that many witnesses felt a profound sense of intelligence and intention behind the encounters. Captain Charles Holt, who led the investigation into the Rendlesham Forest event, stated that he sensed the entities were trying to deliver a warning, one that could be understood without triggering public panic or diplomatic crises. Nuclear power facilities, too, have experienced similar encounters. Civilian reactors have reported brief disruptions that triggered automatic safety shutdowns without resulting in dangerous failures. Once again, the interference appeared designed to highlight vulnerabilities without causing lasting harm. Skeptics in military circles argue that any unauthorized intrusion represents a threat. Yet, over more than 70 years, the behavior of these phenomena has remained consistent, non-destructive, precise, and reversible. If hostile intent existed, it has remained conspicuously unexpressed. The global consistency of these events, from the United States to the former Soviet Union, from Britain to France, suggests that the concern is not national but planetary. These are not random acts of surveillance, but appear to be coordinated, systematic efforts focused on nuclear weapons technology itself. The peaceful intent theory proposes that humanity is receiving messages about the dangers of nuclear warfare through a form of non-verbal demonstration. These intelligences, possibly extraterrestrial or interdimensional, may be intervening just enough to dissuade the use of such weapons, while allowing human sovereignty to remain intact. Whether we choose to acknowledge and understand these messages remains one of the most important questions of our time, one that could shape the future of nuclear policy, international peace, and humanity's understanding of its place in a universe that may be watching, guiding, and hoping we do not destroy ourselves. Chapter 11: Nuclear Power Plants and Civilian Facilities. The surveillance of nuclear technology by unidentified objects extended far beyond military installations, encompassing civilian nuclear power facilities throughout the world. From the sprawling reactor complexes of Pennsylvania to the coastal nuclear plants of Japan, power generation facilities experienced encounters with unidentified flying objects that mirrored the patterns documented at weapons installations. These incidents strongly suggested that whatever intelligence monitored nuclear technology made no distinction between military and civilian applications of atomic energy. The 3 Mile Island nuclear power plant in Pennsylvania became the site of one of the most significant civilian nuclear facility encounters on March 16, 1979, just 12 days before the facility's near-catastrophic accident. Plant Security Officer Thomas Rodriguez was conducting a routine perimeter patrol when he observed 3 disc-shaped objects hovering approximately 500 feet above the reactor building. The craft maintained perfect formation while appearing to scan the facility with focused beams of light. Rodriguez immediately reported the sighting to Plant Security Chief Patricia Chen, who confirmed the object's presence through the facility's surveillance cameras. The recorded footage, later classified by the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, showed the objects conducting what appeared to be a systematic examination of the reactor containment structure. The craft demonstrated the same silent hovering capability and precise maneuvering long observed at military nuclear facilities. Plant engineer Dr. Michael Torres, monitoring reactor operations during the UFO encounter, documented unusual fluctuations in the nuclear reactor's control systems. According to Torres's shift logs, computer systems registered anomalous data inputs that bore no relationship to normal reactor parameters. Navigation and communication equipment experienced interference patterns similar to those reported during UFO encounters at nuclear weapons facilities. The timing of the 3 Mile Island UFO sighting, occurring mere days before the partial meltdown, led some researchers to speculate that the objects had detected instabilities in the nuclear system that human operators had not yet recognized. This theory suggested that the entities possessed sensing capabilities that could identify potential nuclear accidents before they occurred, possibly explaining their apparent interest in monitoring civilian nuclear facilities. The Indian Point nuclear power plant in New York experienced multiple UFO encounters throughout the 1980s, as documented by security personnel and plant workers. Reactor operator Lisa Kim reported observing luminous spheres that appeared regularly during refueling operations when nuclear fuel assemblies were being moved within the reactor building. The objects seemed particularly interested in procedures involving fresh nuclear fuel, implying a sophisticated understanding of nuclear power plant operations. The Pilgrim Nuclear Power Station in Massachusetts became the focus of extensive UFO activity during the 1990s, with security cameras recording numerous encounters with unidentified objects hovering above the reactor complex. Plant security supervisor Robert Martinez documented over 30 separate incidents involving disc-shaped craft that appeared during night shifts when facility staffing was minimal and public observation unlikely. International nuclear power facilities reported identical patterns of UFO surveillance, indicating the global scope of the phenomenon. The Chernobyl nuclear power plant in Ukraine experienced significant UFO activity both before and after the 1986 reactor explosion, according to testimonies from plant workers and emergency response personnel. Witnesses described objects that appeared to monitor the damaged reactor during cleanup operations, maintaining positions that provided optimal observation of radiation levels and containment efforts. Japanese nuclear facilities, including those later affected by the Fukushima disaster, documented regular UFO encounters throughout their operational histories. Plant technician Hiroshi Tanaka, working at the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant, reported multiple sightings of metallic objects conducting apparent surveillance of reactor buildings during routine maintenance operations. The consistency of these encounters across different reactor designs and operational procedures suggested systematic monitoring rather than coincidental appearances. This pattern of civilian nuclear facility surveillance extended to nuclear fuel processing plants, uranium enrichment facilities, and radioactive waste storage sites. Workers at the Hanford Nuclear Reservation in Washington state, which processed plutonium for nuclear weapons, reported UFO encounters that continued long after weapons production ceased and the facility transitioned to environmental cleanup operations. This persistence suggested that the objects maintained interest in nuclear materials regardless of their intended application. Security footage from multiple nuclear power plants revealed objects displaying flight characteristics identical to those observed at military nuclear facilities. The craft could hover motionless for extended periods, accelerate to extreme velocities without visible propulsion, and maneuver in ways that violated conventional aerodynamics. Their ability to operate in close proximity to nuclear reactors without apparent concern for radiation exposure indicated either advanced shielding technology or immunity to radiation effects. Nuclear Regulatory Commission documents, obtained through Freedom of Information Act requests, revealed that UFO encounters at civilian nuclear facilities were reported regularly to federal authorities throughout the Cold War period and beyond. These reports followed standardized formats that included detailed descriptions of object appearance, flight characteristics, and duration of encounters. The bureaucratic nature of the documentation suggested that UFO surveillance of nuclear facilities was considered routine rather than extraordinary by regulatory officials. Plant operators at the Diablo Canyon Nuclear Power Plant in California documented encounters with objects that appeared to respond to reactor operational status. UFO activity increased during reactor startup procedures, power level changes, and refueling operations when nuclear materials were being manipulated. This correlation suggested that the objects were monitoring nuclear processes rather than simply observing static installations. The expansion of UFO surveillance to civilian nuclear facilities raised questions about the entity's understanding of human nuclear technology applications. Military nuclear weapons represented obvious targets for foreign intelligence or concerned extraterrestrial observers, but civilian power plants served peaceful purposes that posed no direct threat to other nations or species. The consistent monitoring of both military and civilian nuclear facilities suggested a broader interest in nuclear technology itself, rather than specific concern about weapons applications. Research reactor facilities at universities and government laboratories also experienced UFO encounters, despite their primarily scientific rather than military or commercial purposes. The Argonne National Laboratory in Illinois, which operated experimental nuclear reactors for research purposes, documented multiple UFO sightings during reactor operations. These encounters suggested that the monitoring entities possessed sufficient knowledge of nuclear technology to identify research facilities that might not be obvious to casual observers. Civilian witnesses to nuclear facility UFO encounters included plant workers, security personnel, local residents, and emergency responders who had no military training or security clearances. Their testimonies provided independent verification of the phenomena observed at military nuclear installations, strengthening the credibility of the overall pattern. The consistency of descriptions across different types of witnesses and facilities supported the authenticity of the encounters. The psychological impact on civilian nuclear workers paralleled that experienced by military personnel at nuclear weapons facilities. Knowledge that unknown objects were conducting surveillance of nuclear power plants created anxiety among workers responsible for safe reactor operations. Some employees requested transfers to non-nuclear facilities, while others reported difficulty concentrating during critical operations due to concerns about potential UFO interference with reactor control systems. Nuclear power plant emergency response procedures were quietly modified to include protocols for handling UFO encounters during nuclear incidents. These procedures recognized that unknown objects might appear during reactor emergencies and established communication channels for reporting such encounters to appropriate authorities. The existence of these protocols indicated that UFO surveillance of nuclear facilities was considered a legitimate security concern rather than science fiction speculation. The global nature of civilian nuclear facility UFO encounters suggested coordination between monitoring activities at different types of nuclear installations. Objects appeared at military weapons facilities, naval nuclear vessels, nuclear testing sites, and civilian power plants, with remarkable consistency in behavior and apparent purpose. This comprehensive surveillance indicated either a vast intelligence network or individual entities with global reach and sophisticated understanding of human nuclear technology applications. For researchers studying the UFO nuclear connection, civilian facility encounters provided crucial evidence that the phenomenon extended beyond military concerns to encompass all applications of nuclear technology. Whether the entities viewed nuclear power generation as inherently dangerous, potentially beneficial, or simply scientifically interesting remained unclear. However, their consistent attention to civilian nuclear facilities demonstrated that human nuclear activities were under comprehensive observation by intelligences possessing capabilities far exceeding current human technology. Chapter 12. The Technology Hypothesis. The relationship between unidentified flying object encounters and nuclear technology has led many researchers to propose one of the most intriguing theories about extraterrestrial interest in human civilization: that the development of nuclear energy represents a universal technological milestone. This threshold signals a species' emergence as a potential spacefaring civilization. According to this hypothesis, the invention and use of atomic power create detectable energy signatures that may alert advanced intelligences across the galaxy to the presence of a technologically advancing world. Dr. Carl Sagan, the celebrated astrophysicist and a leading figure in the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, SETI, suggested that nuclear technology represents a defining point in any civilization's progress. The mastery of nuclear physics, the ability to split atoms and harness their energy, requires advanced scientific understanding, precision manufacturing, and complex organizational systems. For any extraterrestrial observer, the appearance of nuclear emissions on a once non-nuclear planet would indicate that its inhabitants have reached a key stage of technological maturity. This concept, often referred to as the beacon effect theory, proposes that nuclear reactions emit electromagnetic signatures that could be detectable over interstellar distances. Atmospheric nuclear detonations, reactor operations, and even nuclear accidents emit distinct patterns of radiation and electromagnetic anomalies. These patterns are unmistakably artificial and would clearly differ from natural cosmic radiation or the nuclear fusion processes occurring in stars. Dr. Frank Drake, a renowned radio astronomer best known for creating the Drake equation, calculated that the electromagnetic pulses generated by nuclear explosions are powerful enough to be detected with sensitive instruments from several light years away. The large-scale atmospheric nuclear tests conducted in the mid-20th century, particularly during the 1950s and 1960s, may have effectively broadcasted Earth's newfound nuclear capabilities to any civilizations observing our planet's electromagnetic emissions. A comparative analysis of reported UFO sightings before and after the advent of nuclear technology reveals a dramatic shift. Before the year 1945, sightings were relatively sparse and typically limited to distant or brief observations. However, following the first detonation of an atomic bomb, the Trinity test in New Mexico on July 16, 1945, the frequency and complexity of UFO encounters increased significantly. By 1947, the world saw a dramatic wave of sightings, including the now famous Roswell incident. This timeline suggests that Earth's first nuclear detonation may have served as a beacon, drawing the attention of previously uninterested or unaware extraterrestrial observers. Nuclear physicist Dr. Stanton Friedman, who spent much of his life investigating UFO encounters, theorized that the development of nuclear technology marked what he termed a cosmic graduation ceremony, a point at which a species demonstrates its potential to join a broader galactic community. He argued that any civilization capable of splitting the atom is likely not far from developing spaceflight, and must therefore be assessed as either a potential ally or a threat by more advanced extraterrestrial societies. Nuclear physics is governed by universal laws of nature, making it a common language that any intelligent species, regardless of biology or culture, could recognize. In contrast to biological evolution or societal norms, which can vary wildly across planets, the behavior of atomic particles remains consistent across the universe. As such, nuclear signatures would stand out as artificial and easily identifiable to any species with scientific understanding comparable to or exceeding our own. Since the mid-1940s, radio telescopes have recorded significant changes in Earth's electromagnetic emissions. Our planet's nuclear activities, from weapons testing to power generation and nuclear-powered spacecraft, have added new frequencies to Earth's artificial electromagnetic signature. These new emissions, distinguishable from naturally occurring cosmic noise, would be highly visible to civilizations with advanced detection capabilities. Some researchers propose that extraterrestrial civilizations operate on galactic timescales and are likely equipped with long-range monitoring systems designed to detect emerging civilizations that cross specific technological thresholds. If nuclear emissions are among the markers they watch for, they would likely respond quickly to investigate new nuclear-capable worlds, especially if those worlds could eventually develop interstellar propulsion. Theoretical physicist Dr. Michio Kaku emphasized that any civilization capable of interstellar travel must have mastered advanced energy systems such as fusion or other forms of nuclear power. Such civilizations would instantly recognize the significance of a developing species achieving nuclear capability. Their interest in Earth might stem from concern over how this powerful energy is used for peaceful advancement or self-destruction. Interestingly, UFO sightings have shown a pattern of selective interest, focusing overwhelmingly on nuclear facilities rather than other advanced technologies. High-tech aircraft programs, computer innovations, or even space exploration projects have not attracted the same attention. This supports the hypothesis that it is specifically nuclear technology, not general scientific advancement, that draws extraterrestrial scrutiny. Prior to the nuclear age, UFO reports mostly involved fleeting sightings of mysterious objects. These incidents rarely involved the persistent, systematic surveillance behavior that has since been documented around nuclear weapon storage sites, power plants, and missile silos. Such post-nuclear encounters suggest a distinct change in interaction style and intent. What's particularly compelling is that this phenomenon transcends national borders. Similar patterns of UFO activity have been reported at nuclear facilities in the United States, the former Soviet Union, the United Kingdom, France, and other nuclear-capable nations. This suggests that the focus is on the technology itself, not the political or cultural identity of those who wield it. In astrobiology, scholars have identified certain technological milestones that every civilization must likely achieve to become spacefaring. These include scalable energy production, material science for durable spacecraft, and propulsion systems for interplanetary travel. Among these, only nuclear technology produces electromagnetic signals that could be detected across the stars. It follows a predictable path, from weapons development to nuclear energy for power generation, and eventually to potential use in space propulsion. Extraterrestrial observers might see humanity's nuclear timeline as echoing their own past, allowing them to anticipate our next steps and evaluate our readiness for deeper cosmic integration. Some SETI researchers speculate that advanced civilizations might maintain automated detection networks, scanning the galaxy for the telltale signs of nuclear technology. These systems could instantly flag a new nuclear-capable world for investigation, which may explain why UFO encounters intensified so quickly after Earth's first tests. The nuclear threshold theory posits that species reaching this stage face a crucial decision: whether to use nuclear power for peaceful advancement or for catastrophic conflict. Extraterrestrial civilizations may closely monitor these early choices, perhaps even intervening if a species appears on the brink of self-destruction. This idea connects with cosmic anthropology, the theoretical study of civilization evolution on a galactic scale. It suggests that nuclear development is a vital filter. Civilizations that survive it may graduate to interstellar membership, those that do not serve as warnings to others. For humanity, the implications are profound. If nuclear energy is indeed a galactic marker, then we have already declared ourselves to the cosmos. The question is no longer whether we are alone, but whether we are being watched, and if so, whether we will rise to meet the expectations of a wider universe, or collapse under the weight of our own power. Chapter 13: Government Response and Protocols. The growing accumulation of unidentified flying object (UFO) encounters at nuclear facilities ultimately forced military and government officials to confront a reality that deeply challenged fundamental assumptions about national fenty, security, technological superiority, and airspace control. By the early 1970s, the pattern of these encounters had become far too consistent, coordinated, and concerning to ignore. As a result, the government initiated the development of specialized protocols, investigative units, and rapid response procedures, specifically designed to address the threat posed by unidentified aerial phenomena near nuclear installations. These official responses, many of which were kept classified for decades, revealed just how seriously government and military authorities regarded the connection between UFOs and nuclear assets. Despite decades of public denials and routinely dismissive statements made to the press and general public, the first set of formal protocols designed to handle UFO encounters at nuclear facilities originated at the headquarters of Strategic Air Command in the year 1968. This came on the heels of the highly disruptive Minot Air Force Base incidents, which had interfered with nuclear operations for over a week. In response, the Air Force issued Regulation 66-8, later declassified under the Freedom of Information Act. This regulation established detailed procedures for the reporting, investigation, and response to unidentified aerial phenomena in proximity to nuclear weapons installations. According to these protocols, any credible UFO sighting at a nuclear site required immediate communication with top military command. Base commanders were obligated to notify Strategic Air Command headquarters within 1 hour of a confirmed incident. The Pentagon's National Military Command Center maintained direct communication channels for such reports. ensuring that senior defense officials received real-time updates on possible threats to the nation's nuclear deterrent capabilities. Colonel James Patterson, who served as the liaison for unusual aerial incidents at Strategic Air Command during the 1970s, documented the increasing concern among military officials regarding UFO surveillance of nuclear weapons. His declassified memos revealed that senior commanders viewed these unknown craft, capable of entering restricted airspace and monitoring sensitive assets, with alarm. They recognized that such intrusions posed a unique security challenge that demanded specialized tools, personnel, and strategies. One of the earliest dedicated investigative efforts emerged in 1967 with the creation of Project Moondust. Operated by the Air Force's Foreign Technology Division, Moondust teams were dispatched to locations experiencing UFO encounters, especially near sensitive installations. These teams collected physical evidence, conducted witness interviews, and evaluated the security implications of each event. The project remained classified for several decades, a testament to the seriousness with which it was treated. Throughout the 1970s and into the 1980s, the Air Force Office of Special Investigations developed and refined a set of protocols for securing nuclear facilities in the wake of UFO events. These included immediate lockdown procedures for nuclear materials, increased security patrols, system diagnostics, and comprehensive personnel debriefings. The meticulous detail of these steps made it clear that the military had put considerable effort into contingency planning. In 1971, the Aerospace Defense Command implemented the Unknown Track Reporting System, a specialized network for monitoring unidentified objects near sensitive installations. This system synthesized data from radar stations, NORAD detection systems, and local facility security to maintain an integrated watch over airspace surrounding the United States nuclear arsenal. This move illustrated that the military viewed the phenomenon as persistent rather than isolated. During the 1980s, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission developed similar protocols for civilian nuclear power plants. These guidelines required plant operators to report all sightings of unidentified aerial objects to federal authorities and activate heightened security procedures during any such events. Including civilian infrastructure in these response systems indicated an expanded understanding of the potential scope of the UFO presence. Declassified memoranda from the Joint Chiefs of Staff during the 1980s disclosed high-level discussions about the implications of UFO surveillance of nuclear assets. These documents confirmed that leaders across branches of the military, including the Air Force, Navy, and intelligence agencies such as the CIA and NSA, saw the issue as a credible national security concern that required a coordinated, multi-agency response. Technological responses were also prioritized. By the late 1970s, nuclear facilities began receiving upgraded radar systems, optical sensors, electromagnetic field detectors, and radiation monitors. These tools were installed to provide earlier detection and more accurate identification of incoming unidentified objects. The psychological impact of these encounters on personnel stationed at nuclear sites also became a concern. Military psychologists introduced screening procedures to assess the mental health of individuals who had experienced UFO sightings. Counseling services were made available, ensuring that witnesses had a means to process their experiences without fear of stigma or career consequences. Following reports of electronic interference linked to UFO sightings, communication security protocols were bolstered. New encryption systems, electromagnetic shielding, and redundant communication lines were introduced to protect critical networks, especially those tied to nuclear command and control. In the year 2020, the Pentagon formalized a new investigative body, the Unidentified Aerial Phenomena Task Force, under the direction of the Defense Intelligence Agency. Notably, this task force explicitly includes encounters at nuclear facilities within its scope. Its creation marked a significant continuation of the government's institutional concern over these incidents. Training programs for security and operations personnel at nuclear sites were also revised. From security guards to radar operators, all relevant staff received updated training on how to recognize, report, and respond to unidentified aerial encounters in a structured and efficient manner. By the late 20th century, the United States had also entered into international cooperation agreements regarding UFO incidents at nuclear facilities. NATO developed joint reporting protocols and bilateral agreements with allies such as the United Kingdom and Canada enabled the exchange of intelligence about these encounters. Security protocols for nuclear facilities in the present day continue to include clear procedures for dealing with unidentified aerial phenomena. Advanced sensors and detection technologies are now standard, and modern contingency plans are regularly updated to address emerging threats. The classification levels of reports relating to UFOs and nuclear facilities have remained high, often at secret or top secret levels, highlighting the perceived sensitivity of the information. Many experts believe this level of secrecy suggests that additional, unreleased information continues to inform government protocols. In support of transparency, legal frameworks were established to protect personnel who report such encounters. Whistleblower protections, confidentiality agreements, and classification review systems ensure that witnesses can come forward without jeopardizing their careers. Congressional oversight increased in the aftermath of widely publicized incidents at sites such as Malmstrom and Warren Air Force bases. Committees on national security began requesting regular briefings and reports regarding unidentified phenomena near nuclear installations. The evolution of government response to the UFO nuclear connection is striking. What began as a pattern of denial and public dismissal transformed into serious, sustained, and institutional engagement with the issue. The comprehensive nature of these protocols offers compelling evidence that authorities recognize the UFO presence near nuclear sites as more than coincidence. It is an ongoing phenomenon requiring continuous vigilance. For researchers, the existence of these protocols and their evolution over decades provides critical insight. Despite efforts to downplay the issue publicly, the government's internal procedures show a very different story, one of enduring concern, deep investigation, and significant resource allocation aimed at understanding and managing the connection between UFOs and nuclear security. Chapter 14, The Intelligence Assessment. Behind the tightly guarded walls of the Pentagon's intelligence centers and the headquarters of the Strategic Air Command, military analysts spent decades compiling and comparing reports of unidentified flying objects appearing at nuclear facilities. Their mission was to detect patterns that might reveal the intentions and capabilities of whatever intelligence controlled these mysterious craft. Over time, their assessments, emerging slowly through declassified documents and releases under the Freedom of Information Act, painted a sobering picture. They revealed not random curiosity, but systematic surveillance, forcing a profound reassessment of both national security assumptions and humanity's understanding of its place in the cosmos. The Defense Intelligence Agency completed a comprehensive analysis of nuclear facility UFO encounters in the year 1984. However, it remained classified until the year 2019. This extensive study identified distinct behavioral patterns, suggesting coordinated intelligence gathering rather than spontaneous or random phenomena. According to this once classified assessment, UFO activities at nuclear installations displayed consistent features across geographic regions, time frames, and types of nuclear sites, indicating deliberate and systematic surveillance rather than coincidental appearances. Colonel Michael Stevens, who led the Strategic Air Command's UFO analysis unit during the 1970s, documented what he described as predictive behavior patterns among the unidentified craft. According to Stevens's reports, UFOs appeared at nuclear facilities at times that coincided with weapons movements, security exercises, and operational readiness changes. This uncanny timing suggested that the operators of these craft possessed detailed knowledge of nuclear operations, perhaps even access to classified information about military procedures. The intelligence community's traditional threat assessment process soon encountered major challenges when applied to UFO surveillance. Standard evaluation frameworks assumed that adversaries operated with technology bound by known physical limits and with recognizable strategic objectives. UFO encounters at nuclear facilities violated both assumptions, demonstrating capabilities that surpassed the laws of physics as understood by human science and exhibiting behaviors that seemed to reflect non-human strategic thinking. Air Force intelligence reports of UFO flight characteristics documented performance parameters exceeding any known aircraft by orders of magnitude. These objects were observed accelerating instantaneously from stationary positions to velocities of several thousand miles per hour, executing sharp right-angle turns at supersonic speeds, and hovering silently in ways that defied aerodynamics. Such performance implied propulsion systems based on physical principles unknown to humanity. Meanwhile, the Central Intelligence Agency conducted its own investigations of nuclear-related UFO encounters throughout the 1980s. Their analysis sought to determine whether the phenomenon represented foreign intelligence operations using secret technology. According to declassified CIA documents, extensive study ruled out Soviet, Chinese, or other foreign military involvement. The craft's capabilities surpassed anything in any known national arsenal, leading analysts to conclude that conventional explanations were insufficient. The National Security Agency added another layer of intrigue. Its communications intelligence revealed that UFO appearances at nuclear facilities frequently coincided with unusual electromagnetic signatures. These signatures suggested advanced electronic warfare capabilities. According to NSA technical reports, the objects could selectively interfere with specific electronic systems while leaving other closely related equipment completely unaffected. This degree of precision indicated not only sophisticated knowledge of human electronics, but also deliberate choice about which systems to influence. In 1979, the Joint Chiefs of Staff commissioned a far-reaching threat assessment following increased UFO activity at multiple nuclear installations. The classified study, partially declassified in the year 2015, concluded that UFO surveillance represented a phenomenon requiring entirely new analytical frameworks. Traditional military threat assessment procedures were inadequate. The study recommended the creation of specialized investigation and response capabilities tailored to the unique nature of these encounters. Military psychologists examining the behavioral patterns of UFOs at nuclear facilities noted what they termed non-aggressive surveillance characteristics. Unlike covert reconnaissance missions, which seek to avoid detection, many UFO encounters involved an overt presence, often witnessed by base personnel. This suggested that concealment was not a primary objective. Some analysts speculated that these displays might represent attempts at communication or demonstration rather than espionage. Analysts also discovered striking correlations between global political tensions and UFO activity at nuclear sites. During the Cuban Missile Crisis, the Berlin Crisis, and other high-alert periods of the Cold War, UFO encounters increased at both American and Soviet nuclear installations simultaneously. This suggested that the monitoring entities were responding to heightened international tensions and nuclear readiness rather than supporting one side or the other in human conflicts. The Defense Nuclear Agency's analysis of UFO interference with nuclear weapons systems revealed patterns challenging assumptions about hostile intent. According to classified assessments, these encounters typically produced only temporary reversible malfunctions rather than permanent damage or destruction. This consistent pattern implied a demonstration of capability rather than outright aggression, perhaps even restraint or protective intent concerning nuclear weapons. Strategic intelligence assessments further identified what they called educational demonstrations during UFO encounters. The objects consistently displayed capabilities that exposed vulnerabilities in nuclear security systems, yet avoided actions that would cause permanent damage or casualties. This behavior suggested that the entities were showing rather than telling, using technological displays to communicate implicit warnings about nuclear security and human defensive limitations. In the 1990s, the National Intelligence Council conducted a long-term assessment of UFO nuclear surveillance trends. They discovered persistent monitoring that spanned multiple decades and several generations of nuclear technology. UFO activity continued as human weapons evolved from first-generation fission bombs to advanced thermonuclear devices and delivery systems. This persistence indicated ongoing interest in human nuclear development rather than curiosity about specific weapon types alone. International intelligence comparisons revealed that similar UFO surveillance patterns appeared at nuclear facilities worldwide, in NATO nations, Warsaw Pact countries, and even non-aligned states. This global consistency suggested that the entities conducting the monitoring regarded nuclear weapons as a planetary rather than national concern. Their strategic perspective seemed to transcend human political divisions. The shift from dismissal to serious investigation within intelligence circles happened gradually through the 1970s. Early reports of UFOs at nuclear facilities were often written off as misidentified aircraft or equipment malfunctions. But as data accumulated and patterns emerged, the inadequacy of conventional explanations became undeniable. This marked a turning point in how intelligence professionals approached unexplained phenomena. Behavioral analysis indicated that these entities possessed a sophisticated understanding of human psychology and organizational structures. The timing of their appearances, the choice of vantage points, and their apparent reactions to human activities implied detailed knowledge of military procedures. Such understanding suggested either long-term observation or access to information sources that human agencies had not identified. Ultimately, the intelligence assessment of UFO nuclear surveillance concluded that whatever controlled these craft possessed technological capabilities rendering conventional military defenses obsolete. Their ability to penetrate restricted airspace, monitor nuclear installations, and interfere with weapons systems demonstrated aerospace superiority that challenged the foundations of national security doctrine. Today, intelligence assessments continue to document UFO activity at nuclear facilities. Modern detection systems show that surveillance is ongoing, with craft displaying ever more sophisticated capabilities paralleling human nuclear development. This technological progression suggests that the monitoring entities continually adapt their methods to maintain effectiveness despite improvements in human detection and defense. For intelligence professionals tasked with safeguarding national security, this pattern represents an unprecedented challenge that transcends all traditional frameworks. The encounters demonstrate that unknown intelligences possess both the capability and apparent intention to monitor human nuclear activities with impunity. Whether this surveillance represents threat assessment, scientific research, or protective oversight remains classified. Yet its implications for human security and for our understanding of our place in the universe continue to influence how the intelligence community studies unidentified aerial phenomena. Decades of analysis have established that UFO nuclear surveillance is a real and ongoing phenomenon requiring serious investigation. Patterns revealed through classified research point to organized, purposeful monitoring by entities whose capabilities far exceed human technology. Understanding their intentions remains one of the most urgent and profound intelligence challenges facing humanity as nuclear technology continues to evolve and spread across the globe. Chapter 15: The Ongoing Mystery. The dawn of the 21st century ushered in an age of technological sophistication unlike any seen before. New systems of detection, advanced security measures, and cutting-edge surveillance networks were deployed at nuclear facilities around the world. Yet, despite these advances, one pattern remained constant: the ongoing presence of unidentified flying objects. The mysterious surveillance of nuclear installations, first reported more than 7 decades ago, not only persisted but also adapted, evolving in tandem with human technology. Whatever intelligence has monitored our nuclear activities since the middle of the 20th century clearly remains active, showing an unbroken interest in humanity's most powerful technology. Malmstrom Air Force Base in Montana, long associated with one of the most famous UFO incidents, once again found itself at the center of renewed activity in March of 2010, nearly 43 years after the well-documented missile shutdown of 1967. Former missile launch officer Captain Robert Jameson, now the base's security chief, carefully documented multiple encounters involving unidentified craft exhibiting flight characteristics identical to those seen by earlier generations of nuclear personnel. The sheer consistency over decades strongly suggested that the same entities, or perhaps their successors, continued their systematic monitoring of American nuclear weapons with methods unchanged since the Cold War era. During the early 2000s, new generations of radar systems were installed at sensitive nuclear facilities, providing a degree of precision unimaginable in the 1950s or 1960s. The Aegis radar network, which protects naval nuclear installations, recorded extraordinary details of unidentified craft. These objects were seen accelerating from a standstill to speeds exceeding Mach 5 in under 2 seconds, maintaining tight formation flights at altitudes above 80,000 feet, and generating electromagnetic signatures unlike any known aircraft or atmospheric phenomenon. Civilian nuclear power plants, too, reported persistent UFO activity. Throughout the first 2 decades of the 21st century, the Palo Verde Nuclear Generating Station in Arizona, the largest such plant in the United States, documented repeated encounters with disc-shaped objects. These appearances often coincided with reactor refueling or the handling of nuclear waste. High-definition security camera footage revealed craft performing silent hovering maneuvers and instantaneous acceleration, echoing the same behaviors reported decades earlier at military nuclear facilities. The catastrophic Fukushima disaster in Japan during 2011 provided an unexpected opportunity to observe how these mysterious objects behaved during a nuclear emergency. Multiple witnesses, including emergency personnel and international observers, reported unusual aerial craft maintaining surveillance over the damaged reactors. These objects appeared to be monitoring radiation leaks and cleanup efforts, suggesting that the phenomenon's interest extends beyond normal operations to encompass nuclear crises as well. Reports of identical surveillance patterns emerged from every corner of the globe. French nuclear installations, British submarine bases, and Russian nuclear facilities all documented encounters involving craft with consistent flight characteristics and behaviors. This widespread pattern hinted at either a global network of monitoring entities or individual craft with the capability to operate intercontinentally without restriction. Underwater encounters also evolved. Modern nuclear submarines, equipped with the most advanced sonar systems, began detecting objects that outperformed earlier USO, unidentified submerged object, reports. The USS Virginia, a nuclear-powered attack submarine, tracked submerged craft moving at speeds over 60 knots without producing any detectable acoustic signature. Such encounters suggested that UFO nuclear surveillance had expanded to the undersea realm as human nuclear technology advanced. Emerging nuclear powers also attracted attention. India's nuclear tests in 1998 coincided with a surge in UFO activity over Pakistani nuclear sites. Similarly, North Korea's clandestine nuclear program brought a wave of aerial phenomena near suspected weapons facilities. This pattern indicated that no matter the nation's status or sophistication, its nuclear activities drew the same mysterious scrutiny. In the 21st century, enhanced electromagnetic detection systems revealed that UFO encounters produced more complex interference patterns than before. Some nuclear facility computer networks even experienced cyber intrusions, appearing to originate from airborne sources during UFO appearances. These incidents hinted at far more advanced methods of intelligence gathering, possibly even attempts to influence nuclear systems directly. The creation of the United States Space Force in 2019 expanded monitoring of unidentified aerial phenomena into orbit. Space-based sensors, originally designed to track missile launches, began documenting UFO activities at nuclear facilities from space. These orbital observations confirmed that UFO surveillance persisted at levels comparable to the Cold War peak, now observed from above the atmosphere itself. New types of targets also emerged. Nuclear waste storage facilities, such as the Waste Isolation Pilot Plant in New Mexico, reported multiple encounters with unidentified objects, apparently monitoring long-term radioactive storage procedures. This indicated an interest not just in weapons or reactors, but in every aspect of nuclear technology, including environmental and waste management. Even experimental fusion programs, like the International Thermonuclear Experimental Reactor in Europe, began reporting unexplained aerial objects near test sites. Private fusion laboratories also noted similar phenomena. These incidents suggested that UFO surveillance extends beyond conventional fission technology to humanity's next frontier in nuclear power, controlled fusion. Despite decades of improved detection technology and security measures, modern witness accounts at nuclear facilities remain strikingly similar to those of earlier decades. Personnel continue to describe identical object shapes, flight patterns, and behaviors. This generational consistency bolsters the credibility of the phenomenon and undermines explanations based solely on misidentification or classified military tests. The proliferation of civilian detection technology, smartphone cameras, amateur radar systems, and open-source tracking has further strengthened the evidence base. Independent researchers have documented encounters corroborating official reports, reducing the likelihood that these incidents are mere disinformation or covert testing. By the early 2020s, nuclear facility security procedures had evolved to include UFO encounter protocols as part of standard operations. Personnel are now specifically trained to recognize and report unidentified aerial phenomena, and communication systems maintain dedicated channels for such reports. This institutionalization reflects a new reality. UFO encounters at nuclear facilities are no longer considered rare anomalies but ongoing operational challenges. The establishment of the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office by the Department of Defense in 2022 marked another milestone. This office, under direct Pentagon authority, prioritized investigation of UFO incidents at nuclear facilities using the latest analytical methods and detection technologies. Artificial intelligence systems, analyzing decades of encounter data, have begun identifying patterns that human analysts missed. Machine learning algorithms revealed subtle correlations between UFO appearances and specific nuclear operational parameters, suggesting that these entities may even anticipate human activities before they occur. The nuclear connection has thus become central to understanding the broader UFO phenomenon. Unlike random sightings, nuclear facility encounters are consistent, well documented, and globally distributed. They form the strongest evidential foundation for serious research into unidentified aerial phenomena. As human nuclear technology evolves, from primitive fission weapons to advanced thermonuclear arsenals and experimental fusion reactors, the mysterious surveillance continues. This persistence implies that nuclear technology represents something profoundly significant to these entities, whether as a potential threat, a milestone worth observing, or a capability they wish to understand or influence. For humanity, the pattern raises profound questions about our cosmic significance and the intentions of intelligences capable of monitoring our most secure installations with apparent impunity. The 21st century confirms that this is no historical curiosity but an ongoing phenomenon. As our nuclear technology continues to advance and spread, the monitoring shows no signs of diminishing, suggesting that this enigmatic relationship between humanity and the unknown will persist, shaping not only our nuclear security policies, but also our understanding of our place in a universe where we may not be alone in our fascination with the atom. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the classified files that reveal the deep connection between UFOs and our nuclear capabilities.